the 18th of July, 2025, Friday. And I had a really busy day, so I'm a little bit later coming on. I did get a workout in. It was leg day again. And I walked the dog, so it was a nice walk. But now I'm going to get into my updates. I'm going to get on my social media here and share some interesting information. And this is from White Rabbit. And I would highly recommend checking him out, especially his White Rabbit podcast. And he's also had me on his show. It's been a few months. I'm just going to refresh this and put the. So this is moments after shots were fired. This is regarding the Trump alleged assassination attempt. And I know people think that's controversial. See my videos on that from last year. So moments after shots were fired, a member of Trump's team rushes to the side of the stage to gather photographers. Odd behavior shows how they staged the famous photo. I've also talked about the famous photographer that was there catching this epic moment, and who's also part of other famous moments that also involved previous presidents. And so anyways, this is just something to look at. It's just very interesting. Obviously, it's hard to prove this, but again, I do give compelling evidence, and so do other people. But anyways, here we go.
President's been shot. No. Either that or they're covering. We don't know. Either that or they're covering it. We love you. We love you, President Trump. We love you. We love you, President Trump.
The flag being lowered into position. Again, this is just very interesting.
We love you. Yes. 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 We love you, President Trump. No. No shot.
So anyway, it's just very interesting from White Rabbit podcast.
Any Canadian that thinks
Coming out of Canada. So Canada justice system weaponized and laws applied differently for immigrants versus citizens. And this is from Proud Canuck 78.
our justice system hasn't been weaponized by the politicians, well, I don't know what glue you're sniffing. Chris Barbie sentenced in a week, and they want to go put him in jail for 2 years and take away his truck, which he earns a living with. And meanwhile, in Ontario, a pedophile gets a conditional discharge because if we find him guilty of trying to meet a 15-year-old girl with $140 cash for you-know-what, then it might mess with his immigration status. It might make it harder for him to bring his wife over. Yeah, this is our political system. This is our justice system. Canada's broken. Shit show. So apparently in
Yep. Canada's broken. All right, so there's a lot of controversy right now surrounding what people are saying is Hamas being affiliated with ISIS. There's multiple videos that I saw on that. My goodness, I have to go down so far because I'm having so many conversations with Grok. Let me see it here. Where is this? I have to go so high up. Oh, forget it. I'll go back to it later. More important information. Nope, that was my gym time. All right. Because I was talking yesterday about conversion therapy. So at only 9, and this is from Gays Against Groomers, at only 9, Avery Jackson appeared on the cover of National Geographic as a trans girl. He was put on puberty blockers and sterilized before natural development. Now at 17, he identifies as non-binary and asexual. Outcomes shaped by the drugs. These effects are permanent. So even WPATH, which I was mentioning yesterday, President Dr. Marcy Bowers admitted puberty blockers can leave males unable to ever experience arousal or orgasm. These same drugs are used to chemically castrate adult sex offenders. I talked about that yesterday. Children cannot consent to life-altering medical treatments. Yeah, so every single child who was or adolescent who was truly blocked at Tanner stage 2 has never experienced orgasm, male and female. I mean, it's really about zero, she said. Bowers complained in a talk with Mount Sinai Health System that she was getting heat from the left for abandoning the transgender agenda by speaking out against puberty blocking hormones, also called gonadotropin releasing hormone analogs, a class of drugs which suppresses sex hormones by continually stimulating the pituitary gland. I had concerns about installing hormone blockers for children because it affected their surgical results that might affect how they respond sexually. And I get a lot of backlash on the left for people who felt like I was abandoning the cause, she said. Miss Jackson, the self-described conservative Christian, is a public speaker and promoter of pediatric transition. That's every increasing evidence parents of children with autism are identifying them as trans early in life. Entire support groups formed to support this. And so it goes on from there. But this is just again to reinforce what I was talking about yesterday. Just the risks of hormone blockers, hormone therapy. All right. And I think that is... Now on to two interesting videos. A lot of people are talking about this cabinet clown, the new public safety minister. Carney's public safety minister has ties to terror groups. He needs to be fired. This is from Rebel News. I will link it.
Would you trust your family's safety to a guy who's literally banned from dealing with terrorist threats because of his own connections to the terrorists? No? Well, too bad, because that guy's name is Gary.
There's so many corrupted people within cabinet. And again, there's not a lot of positions within Canada. So you have like approximately 35 people within Canada. And then also people on the left that are voting to support these policies. And obviously people from the Bloc Québécois and NDP largely as well that are destroying Canada from the inside out and making an embarrassment of Ottawa.
Anand Sangri, and he's your federal public safety minister.
Prime Minister, Global News has an investigation has unveiled that the public safety minister wrote letters before he was the public safety minister on behalf of a man and his immigration status to come to Canada, even though this man was a member of a listed suspected terrorist group. The public safety minister is in charge of border security, obviously very important to any trade deal going forward. What confidence do you have in the public safety minister with your reaction to this, sir?
Thank you for the question. Look, the public safety minister has been transparent about the details of that situation, and he has my confidence. Thank you.
Canada's public safety minister is too compromised to handle public safety. That's not a punchline. That's the actual state of affairs in Carney's Liberal circus. That's why he has to go. Head to firegary.com and sign the petition to get rid of Canada's public safety minister, Gary Anand Sangri. He's the guy tasked with keeping you safe from domestic and foreign threats, and yet he can't even be briefed on files related to a known terrorist organization, the Tamil Tigers, because he's been personally involved with their Canadian front groups. But instead of stepping down, Gary has simply recused himself from dealing with them. Let's walk through this slowly so that I guess even CBC journalists can follow along. In 2014, the Sri Lankan government, not some alt-right blog, warned Canada that Anand Sangri had deep ties to the Tamil Tigers, the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, a banned terrorist organization in Canada. You'd think that might give the government some pause for handing this guy the entire national security portfolio. But no, Mark Carney made Anand Sangri public safety minister. You know, the guy who's supposed to oversee CSIS, the RCMP, terror listings, criminal organizations, the works. And then what happens? Well, we find out this week from Global News that Anand Sangri personally vouched for a man linked to the Tamil Tigers in his immigration appeal.
Yep.
This wasn't a distant acquaintance. He wrote 2 letters of support saying Canada should let the guy in. A man CBSA said was part of a known terror group involved in propaganda, intimidation, and fundraising. Anand Sangri said that the decision to bar the guy was an error. You know what's an error? Putting a guy with deep political ties to a banned militant group in charge of national security in Canada. That's the error. Anand Sangri has quietly removed himself from any files involving the Tamil Tigers or their Canadian arm, the World Tamil Movement. But that raises the obvious question now. Who's overseeing those files now? Who's protecting Canadians from threats that Ananda Sangari is just too compromised to touch? Nobody seems to know. And Carney isn't saying. You can't be in charge of public safety if you have to put an asterisk beside public and safety. This isn't just poor judgment. It's a national security risk. This is the kind of conflict of interest that gets people in other countries removed from office. Here in Canada, it gets you a cabinet post and a raise. If this government cared even a little bit about safety, transparency, basic decency, or ethics, Gary and Ananda Sangari would be gone already. But they don't. They care about identity politics, fundraising from the Tamil diaspora, and loyalty to the Liberal Party above all else. Full stop. So it's up to us. Mark Carney won't do the right thing. Ananda Sangari isn't exactly known for his good judgment. That's why we made a website. Go to firegary.com, share the facts, demand accountability, because if the public safety minister can't even be trusted to handle terrorist files, he sure as heck can't be trusted to protect your family. Go to firegary.com, sign the petition today. For Rebel News,
Sign the petition. She's great. She's definitely one of the ones in Rebel News that I really do enjoy watching. And Robert Krychek, Tamara Lugioni, of course, Alexis Lavoie, who I don't like seeing these days, Ezra Levant. I think he's very biased and an extreme radical. And again, it's unfortunate because he does share some good information, but anything that he covers regarding Israel and Palestine, he's completely off the mark. Completely off the mark. All right, here's another one. From, I think his first name is David Creighton. Yeah, so right with David Creighton. And here we have Pierre Poilievre. And again, I'm not saying he's perfect by any means, but he is literally all we have right now as someone who can represent conservatives and hold Carney accountable in Parliament for a lot of the corruption.
Truth during the election campaign. Tell Canadians the opposite of the truth during the election campaign. Second, we're calling on the Prime Minister to sell his investments, turn them into cash, hand them to a trustee who can invest them in a way that is completely blind to him, so that he does not have any knowledge of what he owns. That is the spirit of a blind trust. A blind trust is meant to be something that the owner does not know anything about. That's what it means to be blind of the assets. But right now, Mr. Carney is clearly not blind of what he holds, because even we know what he holds due to this disclosure.
Yes, you all read my comments, and we've done a couple of shows on Pierre Poilievre's response to Mark Carney's so-called screen, so-called I'm going to self-regulate. We've got a guy on the show today who knows more about this than I do, or anybody else probably who's watching today. It's Brett Oland. And we'll be back in a minute with the first questions for Brett Oland. Thanks for watching today. This is David Creighton, broadcasting live as always from Ottawa.
The Prime Minister lied and his minions.
But we also need to resolve to resist.
Yes, please subscribe to the station. We're losing subscribers. Sometimes we're almost at the 60,000 mark. Actually, I think we met the 60,000 mark. We should be way over that now. But of course, YouTube is deliberately putting their thumb in this broadcast every day because we talk truth, not propaganda. And of course, that was what George Orwell's all about, wasn't it? Truth, not propaganda. You've got to be in favor of the truth instead of in favor of propaganda. So it's really fantastic. And this guy was on the show might have been 3 months ago now. And Brett Oland. And I call him Alberta's banker. And it's not an official title. Nobody's given him that official title. I've given him that official title. I think he's Alberta's banker. Why? Because he's honest, because he gives people good advice, because he's not in favor of the globalist bankers, because he's a good man. All of the things I don't think I could ascribe to the banker who runs this country right now. So without further ado, let's bring on Brett Olin. Thank you so much for joining me again, Brett. It's always a pleasure to have you here because did you know? You probably didn't. My producer had to point out to me the other day the biggest viewership we had this year on this show was the last interview we did with you, where we talked about Mark Carney deliberately trying to devalue the Canadian dollar. You have been the biggest exhibit on this show. So it's so nice to have you back because I know you've always got something fantastic to talk about. So thank you. Thank you, Brett, for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. I'll certainly take that title of Alberta's banker happily and see what we can do with it. So,
well, there's been other bankers who have been ascribed to certain organizations, and I won't mention those things, but I think Alberta's banker is not a bad label for you because, of course, we'll get to that one later. But you commented on the Alberta Prosperity Project's fiscal plan for Alberta. And actually, I have to confess, I got a product of this before the thing was actually released. And Jeff Rath talked to me and said, don't go public till we do. And I said, of course, that's just like government. No, don't go public till we do. But I was so impressed with how these guys had put this thing together. And I read this thing from cover to cover, and I said, I don't see how federalist forces can financially, mind you, it's never about finances. This is why Quebec is never separated, because Quebec can't separate financially, but they can separate on emotion. Alberta could separate on the financial accounts, but there might be enough people in Alberta saying, no, I still want to stay with Canada because I believe in that. But that's not what you are all about. You're looking at this and you're saying, this is a sound plan for Alberta.
yeah, and it's important to point out that I haven't vetted these numbers that were in the Value of Freedom report, nor am I partisan in any way to any way or the other. But the thing is, I think it's a very important piece of the puzzle, not that it's the only piece of the puzzle, to take a look at the economics of this. And as I sort of pointed out in that tweet that you were showing there, the numbers are pretty compelling for Alberta's independence. And I think it's important for people to, again, take it part of the consideration. And really at the end of the day is I would recommend everybody on both sides of the fence take a look at a logical, rational number set that largely seems to make sense and is directionally right, in my opinion. And it's hard to shake a stick at something like that. At the very least, it seems as though Alberta isn't getting that fair shake, and we need to be able, as Albertans, to square that circle.
So you're saying Alberta, but you're saying essentially Alberta can survive as an independent entity, as a, shall we say, a republic or whatever it becomes. Do you think that's possible?
Functionally, financially, yes, it would be. According to these numbers, we would have one of the highest GDPs in the world within Alberta. So our productivity is the highest in Canada and rivals other parts of the world. Our net incomes and net worth per person would be higher than anybody in the world. It's a pretty compelling case. And so I don't think emotion, which is a lot of what's driving the conversation around this, should be the entire part of the conversation.
You know, I don't know exactly where I stand in this issue right now because I'm going back and forth on this and thinking Alberta could be a great gem.
I understand why Alberta, a majority of people want to separate from Canada, especially with what's going on in Ottawa right now. It's a freaking shit show. But I don't think it's good in the medium to long term for Alberta or Canada as a whole. And I don't think that even if they won the election, or the referendum rather, that this was anything that would be passed. And there are a lot of Indigenous communities that are speaking out on this as well. But again, I do think more pressure needs to be put on Ottawa, especially specifically the House of Commons and the cabinet, in order to unfuck what they're doing with all these bills and the pressure and the barriers that they've put on Alberta and countless other provinces and territories within Canada.
Generator of income around the world, but I love Canada so much, so it's going back and forth for me as well, and it's difficult. It's very difficult, but I also agreed with you in terms of that. Jeff Rath released that report to me, and I said, "Hey, this makes perfect sense." So that's enough of that. I want to talk about this because it's where we are in Canada today. And I'm not sure I want to be where we are in Canada today. But let's listen to this for a minute.
Conservatives are calling for two things today. One, we call on the Prime Minister to come before you and explain the contradiction. How is it that he was telling Canadians that he only had real estate and cash?
I own nothing but cash and personal real estate.
When he knowingly had stock options, and other deferred benefits. How is it that he claimed he didn't know it was in his blind trust when we now learn that he knew exactly what was in that trust? And how is it that he said that he had no financial interest in Brookfield when he knew exactly that he had stock options and deferred share units? Finally, so we want him to explain why he told Canadians the opposite of the truth during the election campaign. Second, we're calling on the Prime Minister to sell his investments, turn them into cash, hand them to a trustee who can invest them in a way that is completely blind to him, so that he does not have any knowledge of what he owns. That is the spirit of a blind trust. A blind trust is meant to be something that the owner does not know anything about. That's what it means to be blind of the assets. But right now, Mr. Carney is clearly not blind of what he holds, because even we know what he holds due to this disclosure. And this will put him in an impossible position where he will be conflicted at every turn. So either he will have to get up 3 or 4 times every cabinet
560 companies
to avoid stumbling over the 100 plus potential conflicts that the ethics commissioner has identified, or he will act in the cabinet to potentially favor his own interests. Neither of those possibilities is acceptable. And so, again, we call for him to explain the falsehoods, sell his holdings, end the conflicts, work for Canadians. We need a Prime Minister whose only purpose is serving the Canadian people.
Okay, I'm all for Canadian people, all for a Prime Minister serving the Canadian people. But can we actually hold him accountable for any of these things? Because Poilievre says, first of all, he should have to tell Canadians where his assets are. Can the government of Canada do that legally? And secondly, should we believe whatever Mark Carney comes up with? Because the ethics commissioner said, yes, there's 103 possible conflicts of interest here, but we'll let Mark Carney and his boys self-regulate that. That's what worries me, really worries me.
Yeah, it's definitely troubling. So for your viewers to know, I have an Institute of Corporate Directors designation, which really means I'm quite good at corporate governance. And one of the key features of corporate governance is conflict of interest. And Mark Carney would know that I looked at the list of 103 companies that he's involved with, and majority of what is involved in these 103 companies is a direct conflict of interest of the direction of Canada. And you would definitely be in tune to be more focused on a lot of the policies and procedures of the direction of the government of Canada if you had a vested interest in a lot of these companies. Mark Carney would know this. He has experience with conflict of interest, and not only is it a direct conflict of interest, it's so you can say, okay, we don't see a direct conflict of interest here. There's also the perception of a conflict of interest, and I think by Canadians bringing this up, you bringing it up, Poilievre bringing it up, there is a perception of a conflict of interest. So I think in this turn, Poilievre is correct that there should be some kind of blind trust set up for Mark Carney, where he has no influence over the direction of this. Or better yet, I think he should put all his assets in Canadian bonds. If he's got so much confidence in the direction of Canadian bonds, I think he should stick it all in 10-year, 20-year Canadian bonds. I think that would be hilarious, because I think long-term treasury bonds in Canada are going to absolutely collapse because the amount of inflation that's going to be coming up on people
Carney has largely created
years. So I think he should eat what
as the governor of the Bank of
bites
Canada, as
off
COVID
and
for
basically
many
put
years.
all his assets
Now is the
in those 10, 20-year bonds and really stake a claim in confidence in Canada that way, versus having most of his assets based out of the United States.
Do you have any confidence in the ethics commissioner for saying he can self-regulate? He can just let himself. No,
it's a short answer. And frankly, in my opinion, the ethics commissioner is offside with saying something like this. It's conflict of interest or perception of conflict of interest, and by enough people pointing this out, there is that perception. And so by the ethics commissioner saying to self-regulate, it absolutely isn't an impossible position. You cannot be completely partisan in your decision making when in the background you have $5, $6, $7, $10 million invested in a lot of these policies that were.
And I just want to give some context. I've shared this before. I'm gonna share it again just to reinforce that Carney was not someone that I was tracking recently, like everyone else. Respectfully speaking, and let me see if this is the one. This is from 2021, and so this is from Carney. Make no mistake, the money is now there if the Globe truly wants to arrest the climate crisis. Talking about the climate friggin' scam. Today, the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, GFANZ, over 130 trillion of capital from 450 plus firms across 45 countries is committed to transforming the economy. COP26, 30th of November 2021. Literally, my comment there was, and that was 0 second. Anyways, I would prefer you get arrested, to be honest. And so this was this was 4 years ago that I was calling Mark J. Carney out, and I friggin' called it. I'm like, this fucking guy, like, he's gonna be the fucking, like, he's gonna destroy Canada. And look at us now. 4.5 years later, this guy's the prime minister. Absolutely disgusting, which is why, like, even before he got elected, I was like, don't vote for him, guys. Don't. But elbows up, fucking people, man. I just can't believe how fucking dumb some people are, respectfully speaking. Oh my God. And if you voted for him and you're listening to this, I'm sorry, but you're a clown. Like, respectfully, I just get so frustrated because people did not see this coming. Oh my God. Anyway.
We benefit you financially.
Yeah.
4 years ago.
Absolutely. And what worries me, though, is that, what worries me, though, I'm trying to get this.
2021 on the record calling this guy out.
Nobody is talking about, nobody in the mainstream media is talking about the fact that Mark Carney is a banker. You're a banker. Is Mark Carney behaving like a usual banker, or is he possibly talking about using funds outside of Canada for his European friends?
Like 90, and I'm going to err on the side of the low side. 91% of Carney's shares and stocks and EFTs are American. Like 0.3. Like there's two companies that registered in the Cayman Islands and Bermuda. Is it Bermuda? Anyways, offshore accounts.
Well, and he very well could be, and I'm not positive of that, and we might not ever know something like that. But the thing is, we have rules within my organization, Bow Valley Credit Union, where I can't approve loans where I'm personally involved with. So of course I have a mortgage and business loans and lines of credits, but it's important to make that distinction that I shouldn't be involved in the decision making of whether I should get that loan or not. That's where the board of directors comes in. The same thing happens at the highest level in Canada with government officials should be recusing themselves from these decisions where billions of dollars are basically going to go into investments in Canada, and especially if something like Brookfield is well positioned to be in front of something like that. There's also insider trading issues around that, and so the Securities Commission should perhaps get involved if he's not going to declare himself a conflict of interest. Perhaps the Securities Commission would step in and say something about this. And absolutely, it seems that he is moving towards bending the knee to his European partners around this. And it's been quite clear that he's trying to separate himself from Trump and the United States administration. So,
well, when we first talked a couple of months ago, you talked about the fact that you really believed that Mark Carney was trying to devalue the Canadian dollar. Has he taken steps, concrete steps to do so since he's been prime minister as elected?
Well, there's definitely some compelling evidence that has taken place, and perhaps through his arrogance, he thought he could do a lot more damage or control around the U.S. dollar than he could. The U.S. dollar market is massive, and so the data that I was really looking for was the Treasury report coming out of the United States, this TIC report. And it did report right when the United States Treasury market was bombing back in April. And there was basically what it means is somebody was massively selling US Treasuries is what was happening. And lo and behold, the report came out in June, and it was Canada that was selling massive amounts of US Treasuries. And so they sold $58 billion worth of treasuries in less than a 5 business trading day period. And so you can't pinpoint exactly who is responsible for something like that, but that's 14% of the Canadian portfolio of bonds in the United States. So a significant chunk was sold within 5 days, basically spiking the yield on US Treasuries. To me, it looks like the Canadian government was trying to bomb the US Treasury market, and they would not take very kindly to it. At the end of the day, the US Treasury market is too big to have a massive impact. But the thing is, it doesn't look good on Canadians to try and bomb the US market. And I think that's why we're seeing the United States play such hardball with Canadian politicians now. And it's like, well, you're trying to undermine what we're trying to do in our treasury market here. Why are you trying to do that? And I think that's reflective of what we're seeing in the tariffs today. So we have a 35% tariff slapped on us for August 1st. Why are the Europeans only getting a 30% tariff put on their goods and services?
Well, that's an excellent question. But why is Donald Trump so focused on Canada right now? And I can't understand that unless there's an ulterior motive in terms of what he wants from Canada. What do you think about that?
Well, absolutely. If anything, we should give our heads a shake, because we've for the past 20, 30, 40 years, we've become pretty uncoupled from reality. We let our military dwindle to about nothing. We haven't been productive. We're the least productive nation in the G7. Any foreign investment that has come over to Canada and said, hey, we want to invest in your country. We've basically shook our finger at them, gave them a lecture and sent them on their way, didn't allow any capital to come in to Canada, didn't let people invest. And I think we're going to see big problems because of that in the next couple of years. Now, to their credit, the little Liberal government seems to be talking the talk and saying, hey, we want to make Canada an energy superpower. We're going to start up these mines. We're going to start being more productive. But talk is a far, far cry from actually doing. And the thing is, we're in my opinion, a real big debt spiral right now. We've got baby boomers coming up on retirement. We've got massive amounts of debt. We've got massive amounts of deficit. There doesn't seem to be any way out of this other than printing a bunch of Canadian dollars to try and get ourselves out of this. And so unless, as a nation, we bring up our productivity and get our products to market into Asia, to Europe, to the United States, we're going to be in real trouble with our debt because it's just going to start overwhelming us. And so enough talk in my mind. We need action. We need pipelines built. We need mines built. We need manufacturing in Canada. We need to reshore our capital. And none of that is really happening in my mind right now. All it is a bunch of talk. And so is the idea to purposely destroy the Productivity Canada? Maybe.
Well, do you think it was a good idea then for the Conservative Party of Canada, the official opposition, to support Bill C-5? Do you support Bill C-5? I'd like to know.
I think it has way too many warts on it to be supporting of it. There is definitely some good parts of it. There's definitely some bad parts of it. You'd think as the official opposition, there'd be a lot more pushback on something like that, especially when it impacts a lot of the eastern and the western provinces differently. I hate to say it, but it's a bit of a wait and see. And I think Canadians in general are tired of waiting and seeing because usually nothing comes as a result of it. So,
all right, I'm going to break this up a little bit because I didn't watch this whole thing. It's a little dry, respectfully. And so this is what I wanted to talk about before. Okay, so this post. So again, she's not entirely inaccurate.
Biggest scam of the 21st century. That radical Islamists and their apologists in elite Western universities have convinced people that terrorism is just trauma. That Hamas, ISIS, they're just victims
She's talking about Hamas, ISIS. Lump them together, but I'll let her speak.
reacting to imperialism. That rape, beheading, suicide bombings aren't ideological, but emotional. You think Islamists never attack peaceful, innocent people, right? Let me prove you wrong. In 2014, ISIS invaded Sinjar, a Yazidi town in Iraq. Within days, 5,000 men were executed, dumped in mass graves. The women and girls abducted, caged, raped, some just 9 years old, sold for $10 in slave markets. ISIS printed rape manuals. They quoted Quran and Hadith in Dabiq, their magazine, to justify it. The Yazidis weren't people of the book. They were mushrikun, polytheists, and enslavement and rape of non-believing women, they said, was Sharia compliant. This wasn't a fringe cult. This was scripture, followed to the letter. ISIS said, and I quote, slavery is part of Islam. Taking kafir women as concubines is sunnah. Mass executions are jihad. And guess what? The Arab world did nothing to actually stop them. Yes, they issued fatwas calling it un-Islamic, but only after the videos got out. But deep down, they knew this was how Islam expanded always, through India, Persia, Africa. Turkey were actually funding the militias and letting ISIS fighters freely use its borders in and out. Syria ignored it. Saudi Arabia only
ISIS is funded also by Western elitists in order to create the chaos.
Condemned it after it went viral. Iraq looked away. They weren't outraged by the atrocities. They were embarrassed the world saw them. And the West? No protests, no
And not just the West, Israel as well. They don't speak out against ISIS, disgustingly enough.
hashtags, no campus riots. The victims were
And they have also funded them.
brown, indigenous, non Muslim. So the feminists stayed quiet. The Muslim student groups vanished. No BBC Al Jazeera specials. No free Sinjar ever heard from Zoran Mamdani and his professor of colonialism father at Columbia. To those woke activists chanting Hamas slogans, you are being used by soft jihad, funded by petrodollars, defended by regimes that still believe
Funded by petrodollars, that's not wrong.
women are property. You were never taught about the Yazidis because their story exposes the truth that Islamist terror isn't a reaction, it's a playbook rooted in belief, justified by scripture, and enforced by violence throughout history, even now. The Yazidis had no army, they didn't occupy anyone, and still they were butchered. Not because of war, but because they were different. Thousands of Yazidi girls still are missing or enslaved.
True.
And if you stay blind to that, one day it won't just be their daughters, it'll be yours. And no amount of protest will save you then. You know what's the biggest
And so I just wanted to talk about that for a second. There's so much that I was trying to discuss with Grok. So, so do Hamas and ISIS work together? No, generally not, but there is evidence of limited opportunistic interactions in specific contexts, particularly in the Sinai Peninsula, though their ideological and strategic differences create significant tensions. Ideological and operational differences. ECFR, January 9th, 2025. Hamas, a Palestinian nationalist Islamist movement. And again, within Hamas as well, this was a democratically elected system of government that was also funded by Israel and Western countries. I'm gonna reiterate that, and in order to justify taking over all of Palestine. But anyways, seeks a Palestinian state and rejects Israel's existence. And again, that's not entirely correct, especially if you look at the 2017 charter. Rooted in the Muslim Brotherhood, ISIS, a transnational jihadist group, aims for a global caliphate, viewing Hamas as apostates for its ties to Shia Iran and participation in elections. ECFR cites Hamas interviews stating ISIS holds Hamas in contempt for its nationalist focus and Iranian support. Al Jazeera, January 29th, 2025. And again, not everything from Al Jazeera either is credible. Notes Hamas crackdowns on ISIS-affiliated cells in Gaza, including arrests and executions in 2015-2016 to maintain control and prevent jihadist challenges. Hamas's governance in Gaza since 2007, democratically elected, and there are people within Hamas. There are multiple different government institutions within Hamas, just like in multiple other countries where there's a military branch. There's multiple different branches. Anyways, where was I? Prioritizes local stability, clashing with ISIS's what they're calling global agenda. The Guardian, again not fully repeatable, highlights ISIS's denunciation of Hamas for its Iranian ties, calling it polytheist group. No evidence of direct collaboration and attacks, including October 7th. I don't know why Grok does that. It goes back to older conversations. Middle East Eye, December 28th, 2024, confirms ISIS's hostility towards Hamas, noting no operational alliance due to ideological divides. Limited Sinai interactions. Carnegie Endowment, January 11th, 2016, reports Hamas's Qassam brigades maintain economic ties with Sinai-based jihadists, including ISIS Wilayat Sinai for weapon smuggling through tunnels before 2016. Hamas collaborated with Bedouin smugglers and figures like Shadi al-Maneh, Wilayat Sinai leader, to move arms in Gaza, again 2016, benefiting both groups financially. Atlantic Council, September 22nd, 2017, notes Hamas tolerated Wilayat Sinai leaders in Gaza to monitor them, avoiding antagonism while cracking down on ISIS cells within Gaza. Example, 2015 arrests. This was a pragmatic relationship to secure tunnel routes, not a formal alliance. And by the way, there are tunneling systems within Palestine, including Gaza and the West Bank, that were created by Israel. And also, even within the times of Alexander the Great, they noted these elaborate underground tunneling systems within Palestine. So there have been tunnels within Palestine underground and all over the friggin' world for many, 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 many years. And they're trying to claim that Hamas is the ones that created them. Not a fact. The conversation, December 13th, 2023, states Hamas officials met Wilayat Sinai leaders for specific actions, weapons smuggling, medical treatment for injured ISIS fighters in Gaza, but these were limited and driven by mutual interests, no ideological alignment. Hamas's crackdown on ISIS in Gaza, again from Al Jazeera, not a credible source, but Hamas executed ISIS-affiliated leaders in Gaza, 2015-2016, targeting groups like Ansar al-Dawla, al-Islamiyah, after they issued ultimatums against Hamas. The Guardian confirms Hamas's aggressive stance against Salafi jihadist cells to maintain governance. Hamas suppresses ISIS supporters in Gaza to prevent internal threats, with no record of collaboration in military operations. Claims Hamas fought and executed ISIS leaders. Again, this is very redundant. Critique of Hamas-ISIS collaboration, no strategic alliance. Hamas and ISIS are ideological rivals, with Hamas's nationalist focus and Iranian ties clashing with ISIS's global caliphate and anti-Shia stance. Hamas's crackdowns on ISIS in Gaza and ISIS's denunciation of Hamas as apostates indicate hostility, not collaboration. And then it goes on to my Hasbara critique, which is it's friggin' propaganda. So your view on Israeli Hasbara's propaganda is supported by The Intercept, February 7, 2024, which notes Israel's false comparisons of Hamas to ISIS to justify Gaza operations. Clarify no operational collaboration attacks. Okay, so final answer. Hamas and ISIS generally do not work together due to ideological differences. Hamas's nationalism versus ISIS's global caliphate and mutual hostility, with Hamas cracking down on ISIS in Gaza 2015-16. Limited cooperation occurred pre-2016 in the Sinai Peninsula, and Mount Sinai, which I've climbed, is in Egypt, for weapons smuggling involving Hamas's Qassam brigades and Wilayat Sinai, but was economic, not military. It goes on from there. Do Hamas and ISIS work together? No. Against just like more redundancy. Okay, anyway, onto the show.
Yeah, that's very true. I'll end it with this, my friend. You were a banker. I call you Alberta's banker, and the freedom banker, because you fight what you think is incremental control over people's finances. Mark Carney is a banker. He's an international banker. He's been that for most of his actual career. He talks about being in free enterprise most of his life. That's bogus. He's always been a government employee who's profited off of government, who's profited off of the private sector because he's in government. And this is what makes me angriest about Mark Carney, that he somehow pretends to be a free enterprise guy. And he's stolen everything from the conservatives in that leadership in that election campaign that was a benefit to the liberals. And he's back again now. And he's talking, and I can't believe he's writing at 52%, the latest poll I saw, 52% approval rating as prime minister. I don't know who they're talking to. Probably people 70 and over who just love this guy. They're sure as hell not talking to people 25 to 35 who can't afford to buy a house. But I don't believe polls anymore. But that's not the point. What can we expect from Mark Carney in the next 6 months in terms of policy development, where he's going to go? Do you really think this is a prime minister who's going to care in all about average Canadians? And I've got to show this because I forgot entirely. This is fascinating to me. This is Mark Carney's government. We saw.
Sorry, OCD. OCD. Why is it not showing me? Anyway, I want to share again. Because again, my conversations with Grok. Okay, so Hamas's membership includes its military wing, Qassam brigades, political wing, which I've talked about before, has an official political wing. So if you keep on targeting people within Hamas and you're claiming they're all fucking terrorists, which again is only the US, Israel, and the EU, which again is a corrupted organization that Canada should not be involved in. They're not understanding this. It was democratically elected. Hamas's membership includes its military wing, like I just mentioned, political wing. They're getting murdered too, and civilian governance. Example: social services administration in Gaza. Making precise counts difficult because I was asking them like how many people were within Hamas, and there's so many different ranges of like how many Hamas fighters there are, and again people within their military. And so I just wanted to clarify that and just discuss the civilian deaths. And again, it's not to downplay what happened on October 7th, but look at my videos from October of 2023 and after that, and you'll see that it's been highly lied about. And the civilian deaths are, I believe, like the numbers, if you look at multiple different reports, are 593, not 1,200. I'm going to reiterate 593, which again is disgusting. And people should be held accountable for murdering these people. Absolutely atrocious. And the fucking dogs and stuff like that too. But the Hasbara, which is a propaganda arm of Israel and Western countries, like the Heritage Foundation and Project Esther, and right-wing radical Zionists like Mark Levin and those types are all bullshitting about what actually happened that day. And how they allowed it to happen. And the response, depending on what network you look at, was anywhere between 5 and 7 hours afterwards, despite the fact that they were within 1 to 5 kilometers of these areas that were targeted. And I'll reiterate, people within the IDF, people within the Israeli government were firing on the crowds as well, not only with helicopters, but with firearms, and killed their own as well. And so they're not counting those in the numbers. Again, it was a disgusting act. But anyways, back to this.
My producer and I saw this yesterday, and I said,
I know, I'm all
"Holy
over the
crap!
place.
We've got to bring this on the show."
Canada's housing bubble just burst. And now the banks have started to back out. Behind closed doors, they are backing out of deals. And if you're waiting for some big, flashy announcement, let me tell you, you guys are not going to get one. They're just pulling financing, walking away from deals, and canceling loan approvals, telling entire condo projects to figure it out on their own. And this is how the collapse always starts.
Okay, I'm not going to hold you to this woman's word here, but when I saw these figures yesterday, I said, "Holy crap! The banks are foreclosing on people in big numbers. The banks are refusing to renew mortgages. The banks are saying, we're not going to do new mortgages because somebody has told them there's a financial collapse on the horizon." And I'm just wondering, are you hearing any of this? Is this plausible at all?
Okay, so yeah, there's a lot there that I want to cover. So firstly, Mark Carney is a central banker. He's not an actual banker. So there's a big distinction. So we as financial institutions actually care about profit and loss. So if we make a bad loan to somebody and we lose all the money on that loan, we have members in my case that I have to report to. I've got a board of directors to report to. Banks, even the big ones, have shareholders to report to. And so basically they're going to be coming to us and saying, "Hey, what's going on here? Why are you losing money on these loans?" And so a central banker is much different, where they basically just sit at the printing press and effectively they only have two tools that they use. They can lower interest rates or they can print money. That's the only two tools. So when people talk about Mark Carney being this incredible banker, it's such a fallacy. Being a central banker, there's two tools: lower rates, print money. That's it. And so it's not like it takes a lot of genius to be able to do that. And that's exactly what we're seeing in today's economy. It's not like he's a brilliant business mind with all he's doing with. All he's doing is getting in front of this money printing wave and taking advantage of it. And so that's why we see such distortion between age groups there, and it's what's called a K-shaped economy. And so one economy goes up for one set of people and goes down for one other set of people. So whoever was in front of that wave that had assets, that had houses, that had stocks and bonds, have been able to ride that wave of that money printing and take advantage of it. And so of course that's the older generations, and they scratch their head and basically say, oh, well, what's wrong with the world today? You know, we don't see any problems in there, but their asset prices keep on going up. Their bond prices keep on going up. Meanwhile, at the other end of the K, that downward slope, it's people that don't have any assets and basically going, I'm struggling to put food on the table. I can't pay my rent. Things keep on going higher and higher and higher. I've got real problems. And so it's not a real big surprise to me that overwhelmingly that the baby boomer generation voted for somebody like Mark Carney, because it was the status quo. They wanted to basically see things status quo. Poilievre's whole mandate was for change, right? So if there's somebody clamoring out there for change and there's somebody clamoring out there for things staying the same, as long as you're on the top of the heap, you don't care. You financially, you're not burdened by this. But further to your next point about a potential collapse in the housing bubble, I've been watching this pretty closely for a couple of years now, because
Me too.
It's been really interesting, and I'll have to share a chart with you after that I saw on a tweet yesterday. The housing in Canada almost follows perfectly with what a typical bubble looks like. And so there's the early investors, and then there's the massive upslope in the curve, and then right now we're in the position where, hey, things are back to normal, but I think we might drop off a cliff here in the next little while. So now that brings into another bunch of things in place. They'll try and keep interest rates lower to make sure that people stay in their houses. But part of the problem with that is inflation will take off again. And I think that's probably why we've seen the governments try and import a bunch of new Canadians, is because they want to keep that housing bubble from collapsing, and they want to keep it propped up. But things are just getting too wobbly at the top. So now our financial institution is different. We've really tracked this very closely. Our average amortization period, which is the total life of the mortgage of your house that you have a mortgage on, is less than 20 years. Whereas a lot of the major banks, CIBC, BMO, RBC, have punted out that amortization period so that people keep on making those payments and they don't default on those mortgages. And they've punted them out to 30, 35, 40 years in some cases, where they're basically, you're making a very minimal principal payment and you're all interest in. And really why they're doing that is so you don't default on that mortgage. And I think the bigger banks are terrified of this, especially in bigger markets like Toronto or Vancouver or Montreal, where the bubble really got to its height. So now comfortably in Alberta, we never got to those nosebleed levels like they did in Toronto. So I think we're probably better positioned in Alberta to be able to handle something like this. But we're starting to see defaults in Ontario, in BC, because people bought at nosebleed levels. They're now underwater because the equity has gone down on these things. And now these mortgages are coming up for renewal with, in some cases, double the interest rate that they paid initially. And it's a real problem. So I think we can expect to continue to see bigger banks punt out these mortgage amortization periods. In the UK, they have a 100-year mortgage. Can you believe it? 100-year mortgage. That'd be like paying a penny on your principal, and the rest would be interest. And so the government does this on purpose to basically keep that housing bubble inflated. Sorry, you're on mute there, David. Still on mute, David.
Still on mute, David.
No idea why that was in a 100-year mortgage. Who's paying for the rest of that? The kids? The grandchildren?
I don't know.
That's absolutely ridiculous. But
but it's these tricks that they use to try and keep this this housing bubble inflated, which is a massive part of the Canadian economy.
Well, it's a massive yes. And that's, when you say inflated economy, it reminds me of Weimar Republic Germany, which I think we're almost on the verge of. We've got in huge inflation based on the fact that there's nothing left, that the dollar is being imploded, the dollar is being created beyond anything that it's worth. And I think that's what Mark Carney's doing to us right now. But you talked about how he's trying to devalue the Canadian dollar, devalue the US dollar. As a banker to banker, I mean, you are the banker for people who actually have to pay back their loans. The people Mark Carney deals with never have to pay back their loans. It's always about, sorry, we're going to default, but that's okay. That's okay. There's no problem there, because if you have to default, that's fine. If you have to pay back the loans you can't pay back, maybe your government will fall and we'll just look the other way. The average Canadian citizen could never get that sort of treatment from the banks in Canada. And this is why I call you, not just Alberta's bank, but I think Alberta's banker, but I think you're Canada's banker, in terms of why we need to get back to what the banks were there for in the beginning. And they have been completely usurped by globalists like Mark Carney. And my God, Mark Carney is in charge of this country right now. Do you think, and I'll ask this as my penultimate question, second to last question, do you think Mark Carney is trying to usurp control over the parliamentary democracy in this country with bills like C5, where he decides where the money's spent? Do you think he has a more sinister agenda than a lot of Canadians who voted for him would ever have guessed?
I don't have a great answer for that. He seems to be talking a good talk in a way to get out of this, but the tools of control that seem to be lining up are not good. I'm a bit of a student of history. We've seen this time and time again. What I've been reading about is this: we're on a 100-year cycle. So nobody really alive has seen this type of thing before. And when countries, and it happens time and time again, they get into so much debt that really the only solution that they have is to try and print their way out of it. And with that printing comes with two different things. You can take the American model, or you can take the Germany model. And so you get, with the American model, the freedom-based model, the liberty-based model, and basically government getting out of the way and letting the capital markets work free on their own. Or you can take the Germany model with the Weimar Republic, and you basically hire a fascist for the job to take control over everything. I would hope that Canada has enough foresight to recognize that if Carney is going to go down to these methods of control, we've been here before throughout history. I pray that it's not going down that path. And if it is, then people wake up to it. But I think it's very important to recognize that even in Weimar Germany,
breaking news. Sorry, I get a lot of information even when I'm doing these videos, and sometimes I look at it, sometimes I don't. But I was sent this. Canadian Carney Liberals quietly award Pfizer, Moderna new COVID shot contracts. Ottawa Prime Minister Mark Carney has awarded Pfizer and Moderna nearly $400 million in new COVID shot contracts. And so I was looking at that. I'm like, that's very interesting. And so just to confirm, so they are published on Government of Canada websites. Can you share a link? And so, yes, there are indications that contracts related to the new COVID-19 shots with Pfizer and Moderna have been published on the Government of Canada website, specifically referenced on Canada Buys, a platform for public procurement notices. Reports suggest these contracts, allegedly signed on the 30th of fucking June 2025, sorry for swearing, oh my goodness, while he was prime minister, and valued at approximately $400 million, taxpayers' money, with each company receiving approximately $200 million each, are listed under contract numbers Charlie Whiskey 2407275 Pfizer and Charlie Whiskey 2407284 Moderna, running until March 31st, 2026. However, conveniently enough, no official press releases or detailed financial breakdowns have been issued by the government or Mark Carney's office. No shit. And you think that mainstream media is going to report this? Absolutely not. And so just because I'm very transparent, I'm going to go and show you, because he has shares and stocks in both of these companies, but don't take my word on this. So these are all the list of all the shares and EFTs that Clown Carney has. And so I just did a control F because I'm a little bit lazy. Shares of Pfizer Incorporated. So Carney is going to profit off that. And Moderna, because again, I like to be transparent. Moderna. This clown. And so this is just breaking news. Really frustrating. How the fuck is this guy prime minister? Why are there... we need to push a vote of non-confidence. So annoying. This clown is so annoying. And so... Anyway, I'm just too annoyed with this to even continue on with this video. I'm going to link it anyways, because there's so many conflicts of interest. And is mainstream media ever going to report this in Canada? No, because they're state-funded media. And by the way, Canadian taxpayers pay over $1 billion annually for these clowns. I'm so sick of this fucking country. Oh my God. Anyways, on that note, I will leave it at that. And I hope that everyone has a wonderful rest of your day.